Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time.
And today, we are not looking at a novel. We are looking at a blueprint.
A blueprint. Okay, that's a strong word. It implies architecture. It implies design, maybe even intent.
Exactly. I think we all have this habit of reading fiction to escape or, to empathize with the character's journey.
Sure, that's what stories are for.
It is. But today, we're doing something different. We are putting on our hard hats. We are not here to do a literary review of Richard Wright's Native Son.
And we're definitely not here to judge the main character.
No, we are not here to decide if Bigger Thomas is a good guy or a bad guy.
Which is good because, spoiler alert, he's really not a good guy in any traditional sense of the word.
Not at all. And that's the whole point. We were here to analyze a blueprint of American institutional design.
So we're looking at how a specific system of production, can manufacture a specific type of person.
That's it, exactly. The book we're using as our source is Native Son, published back in 1940. And our mission for this deep dive is, well, it's pretty heavy.
It really is. We're essentially tackling the thesis that violent criminal behavior isn't just a glitch in human software.
It's a feature of the operating system.
Wow! Put that on a bumper sticker. It's a feature.
That's the core argument that Wright is making. He is positing that if you build a society with very specific parameters of fear, of spatial containment, economic suffocation, you will get a Bigger Thomas.
It's an output.
That's a predictable output, just as reliably as a Ford factory at the time produced a Model T.
So Bigger Thomas, the protagonist, he isn't really a person in this analysis. He's a product.
For our purposes today, for a systems analysis, yes.
Right.
He is the logical, inevitable output of a machine that is designed for containment and exclusion.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I think for a lot of people, if they remember Native Son from, high school English class, they think
of the shocking part.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the book where the guy accidentally kills the white woman and stuffs her body in the furnace. It's remembered as a thriller, maybe a horror story.
And it is shocking. Wright intended it to be shocking, but the shock is the bait.
The bait for what?
The trap. And the trap is the sociology. Wright is showing us that the individual acts of violence, as horrifying as they are, they're not the most interesting part.
They're the symptom.
They are the explosion. The interesting part is the pressure cooker that made that explosion absolutely inevitable.
Okay, so let's start with the container itself, the title, Native Son. It sounds so wholesome.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds like a politician's autobiography. Or like a story about a farm boy who makes good in the city.
It sounds patriotic. And in a very dark, very cynical way, it is. Wright is asserting a claim of ownership here.
Ownership.
He's saying that Bigger Thomas is indigenous to America. He wasn't imported. He didn't come from somewhere else. He was grown here.
So he's not an anomaly. He's not a monster that crawled out from under a rock.
Right. There was a tendency back in the 1930s, and let's be honest, we still do this today, to look at a violent criminal and say, well, he's an outsider.
He's not one of us.
He's alien to our values? And Wright is just slamming his fist on the table and saying, no, he is yours. We made him. He is a product of this civilization.
You hear this all the time, the bad apple argument.
Exactly. It's the bad apple argument versus what you might call the poisoned soil argument.
And what's that?
Well, if you plant a seed in toxic soil and you deprive it of light and you water it with acid, and then the tree grows up twisted and thorny.
You don't blame the tree.
You don't blame the tree. You look at the gardener. You look at the ecosystem. You look at the system design.
And Wright was apparently obsessed with this. I was reading his essay, How Bigger Was Born, which is basically the companion piece to the novel.
It's the key. It unlocks the whole project.
And in it, he talks about this moment of realization, that there wasn't just one Bigger Thomas. There were millions of them.
Millions. It's a terrifying thought, isn't it?
It's staggering.
He looked around him in Chicago, in Mississippi, where he grew up, and he saw these men whose humanity had been stunted. Their potential, their energy, their drive. It was all being crushed by the environment.
And here's the kicker for me. He realized they weren't all black, but I guess we should put a pin in that for later.
We will definitely come back to that. It broadens the whole analysis.
Okay, so if we're looking at this as a manufacturing process, we have to start on the factory floor, the environment.
Section 1, the architecture of containment.
We're in Chicago, the 1930s. We're on the South Side, in what was known as the Black Belt.
Now, when we say that phrase black belt, I want us to be very, very specific about the mechanics of what that means.
It's not just a neighborhood.
It is not just a neighborhood where black people happen to congregate because, they like the food or the music. We are talking about a cage,
A physical cage.
a bureaucratic and economic cage. There were literal lines. Wright describes specific streets that served as a border. If you were a black family, you could not rent an apartment or buy a house across that line, period.
And at the same time, you have the Great Migration. You have hundreds of thousands of people moving up from the rural South looking for work.
So you have a population that is growing exponentially. But the physical space they are legally allowed to occupy is fixed. It's a box with rigid walls.
Basic economics. Supply is static, demand is skyrocketing.
And what does that do to the price of what's inside the box?
Prices go through the roof, and the quality goes through the floor.
Precisely. Landlords could and did charge premium rates for absolute squalor. We're talking rents that were higher than what white families were paying for nice, clean apartments with running water and privacy.
And what they got was what Wright calls rotten housing, and he talks about the kitchenette.
Yes, the kitchen.
Can you break that concept down? Because I think the word has lost its visceral horror over time. We think of a little hotel room with a microwave.
That is not what this was. Imagine taking a standard single-family apartment, one that was maybe built for a family of 4 or 5 in the 1890s. Now, a landlord buys that building. He goes into that apartment, and he doesn't rent it to one family. He chops it up. He puts up thin little walls, maybe just hangs a sheet, and he creates 4 or 5 or 6 tiny one-room subunits.
So you're living in what used to be a closet.
You're living in a subdivided pantry. You get a single hot plate to cook on, if you're lucky. And the bathroom, it's down the hall, and you share it with 20 or 30 other people.
And this isn't just a function of being poor. This is an engineered density, a forced proximity.
It is density designed to crush the human spirit. There's a line in the book where Bigger says they feel bottled up like wild animals. And that brings us directly to the opening scene of the novel. If you want to understand the entire system, all you have to do is read the first 5 pages.
The rat scene.
A rat scene.
Man, this scene, I remember reading it for the first time. It is one of the most stressful, anxiety-inducing openings to a book I have ever read. It wakes you up faster than a cup of coffee.
It's a pure sensory assault. It starts with a sound. The alarm clock goes off. And Wright describes it, brum, a jarring mechanical scream that just rips you out of sleep.
And Bigger wakes up. But let's look at the space. Describe the space.
It's one room. In that one room, 4 people live. Bigger, who's a young man, his younger brother, Buddy, his sister, Vera, and his mother.
All in one room?
They are literally on top of each other.
Yeah.
The first thing that happens is the boys have to turn their backs and face the wall so the women can get dressed behind them. There's zero privacy. The simple human dignity of being alone with your own thoughts for 5 minutes, it doesn't exist.
It's been engineered out of their life.
And then the scratching starts.
Yeah.
From behind the wall.
And it's not a mouse.
No. It's a huge black rat, bigger than a cat. Wright describes it. And the moment it appears, the room just explodes into chaos.
My mother is screaming. She's standing on the bed, just paralyzed with fear.
And the boys, Bigger and Buddy, they have to hunt it. It's their job. They have to protect the family.
So it becomes a war zone. In this tiny 10 by 10 room, Bigger is blocking the hole with a crate. He's throwing a shoe. He grabs a big iron skillet.
And when he finally corners it, the violence is just, it's extreme. He doesn't just kill it, he smashes it.
Yeah.
He obliterates it. He pounds its head until it's just a pulp of blood and fur.
It's an act of total annihilation.
And then, and this is the absolute key moment for me, psychologically, he doesn't just throw it away. He picks it up by the tail.
And he dangles it in his sister's face.
He terrifies her with it. He chases her around the room, laughing as she screams. He is enjoying her fear.
It's so cruel. He's bullying his own sister.
It is incredibly cruel. But look at the system dynamics at play. In the grand scheme of Chicago, Bigger has zero power. He has no economic power, no political power. He has no power over his own future.
He's a nobody.
But in that room, in that moment, holding that dead rat, he has absolute power over one thing.
Fear.
He can create fear. He can make someone else feel as small and as terrified as he feels every minute of every day.
So the environment is already teaching him that violence is the only tool he has that actually works, that gets a reaction.
The environment teaches him that life is a constant, brutal battle for survival against squalor and vermin. The rat isn't just a rat. It's a metaphor for their entire existence. The outside world sees them as vermin, and they are forced to literally live with vermin.
The pressure cooker is established. before a single line of the main plot even happens.
You know everything you need to know about Bigger's psychological state from that one scene. He's not a nice kid who just needs a break. He is already wired to explode.
And Wright really doubles down on this. Bigger himself describes his life with this phrase, living in jail. He says, "We live here and they live there."
It's a consciousness of the cage. He can see the other world, but he can't touch it.
There's that scene where he and his friend Gus are just loafing on a street corner.
Yes, they're playing white, as they call it. They're pretending to be generals and businessmen, planning global takeovers. It's a fantasy game.
And then a plane flies over. A skywriting plane.
A symbol. The ultimate symbol of technology, of freedom, of the future. The ability to just go anywhere.
And Bigger looks up at it, and he knows he can never fly it.
He knows he can't even get into the school to learn how to be a mechanic to fix it. He feels this. This shadow athwart his life, is how Wright puts it. It's a physical sensation of being blocked, of a wall in front of him that he can't see, but he can feel.
And Wright's argument is that this constant state of exclusion, of being blocked, it breeds a very specific kind of reactive violence.
It's not malice, not at first. It's an assertion of existence.
It's like screaming, "I am here,"
Yeah.
by, I don't know, breaking a window.
Exactly, because if you don't break the window, the world acts as though you're invisible. The violence is a way of forcing the world to acknowledge that you are real.
This leads us directly to the character of Bigger himself. And I want to pause here because this is where the book takes a huge, huge artistic risk.
It's a gamble.
Because Bigger Thomas is a jerk.
Chuckles. That is one way of putting it, yes.
No, I'm serious. If I pick up a novel and the main character in the first chapter is bullying his friends, threatening his sister with a dead rat, being surly and disrespectful to his hardworking mother, my impulse is to check out.
Your impulse is to say, why should I care about this guy?
Exactly. Why should I invest my time and empathy in someone so unlikable?
And that is precisely the question that Richard Wright wanted you to ask.
He wanted me to dislike his main character.
He was counting on it. This was a deliberate artistic strategy, a rejection of what we can call sentimental individualism.
Sentimental individualism. Okay, break that down for me.
So before Native Son, Wright wrote a very successful book of short stories called Uncle Tom's Children.
I've heard of it.
It was a collection of stories about racial injustice and brutality in the South. But the characters, the black protagonists, were noble victims. They were good, hardworking, pious people suffering under a terrible system.
They were sympathetic, the kind of characters you root for.
Exactly. And the book was a critical and commercial hit. But Wright came to hate the public's reaction to it.
Why would he hate a successful book?
He said he found out that people, specifically what he called bankers' daughters, were reading it, weeping over the stories,
Yeah.
and then feeling really good about themselves.
Feeling good because they cried.
Because the tears offered them a consolation. It was a way to feel emotional catharsis without any political action. They could read it, say, oh, look how much empathy I have. I cried for that poor black man. And then they could close the book and go back to their completely segregated lives, feeling absolved.
The tears washed away the guilt. It was a pressure valve.
He felt he'd given them a safety valve. He'd let them off the hook. So for Native Son, he made a conscious pledge. He said he would create a character so hard and deep that he would deny the reader the consolation of tears.
Wow. So he didn't want you to pity Bigger.
He wanted to force you to understand him.
Yeah.
And there is a massive, massive difference between those two things.
Explain that difference.
If Bigger is a fundamentally nice guy who just has a string of bad luck, you can read the book and say, what a terrible tragedy. It's a shame that happened to him. You can blame fate.
It's an individual tragedy.
But if Bigger is a monster, if he's cruel and violent and hateful from the beginning, you are forced to ask a much more difficult question.
Who made the monster?
Precisely. It forces you to look at the factory, not just the product. You can't just say, oh, but he has a good heart. You are forced to look at the conditions that hardened his heart into a stone.
In his notes, Wright mentions that Bigger wasn't just one guy he knew. He talks about seeing the 5 Biggers in his youth. I think this is fascinating because it shows the spectrum of reactions to this kind of systemic pressure.
Oh, this is essential to understanding his method. He's a sociologist here. He's breaking down the archetypes he witnessed growing up in the Jim Crow South.
So let's run through them. Who was Bigger number 1?
Bigger number 1 was the bully. He was the guy who, full of rage at the white world he couldn't touch, took all that anger out on his own community. He terrorized other black people.
That's the Bigger from the rat scene, taking it out on his sister and mother.
Exactly. He attacks the people closest to him, because they are the only available targets.
Okay, who is bigger number two?
Bigger number two was the cool operator. The guy who learned to smile in the white man's face, to say yes, sir, but who would be sabotaging things behind his back. The passive-aggressive rebel,
The one who spits in the soup, so to speak.
or who accidentally breaks the expensive tool. It's a small, quiet form of rebellion.
And bigger number three?
Bigger number three was the one they called the bad nigger. That was the term they used. This is the guy who just openly defied the laws of segregation. He refused to be deferential. He'd walk through the white entrance of the movie theater.
And what would happen to him?
Usually, he'd end up lynched or imprisoned for life. But to the other young men, he was a folk hero because he dared to break the rules.
Then there was bigger number four.
The madman. The one who just couldn't take the psychological pressure and snapped. His rebellion was internal, a complete break from reality.
And finally, number five.
Number five was, to Wright, the most tragic. He was the rebel with no cause, the guy who had all this boundless energy, all this intelligence, all this ambition, but the system gave him no constructive outlet for it. So all that powerful energy turned inward and became a hard knot of hate.
And so Wright's genius was to take all five of these archetypes, the bully, the saboteur, the open rebel, the madman, the frustrated spirit, and smash them all together into one character.
To show that they're all just different symptoms of the same disease, they're all expressions of human energy being channeled into destruction because the system provided no pathway for creation.
And here's the part that really surprised me when I was digging into this background material. Wright said there are white biggers, too.
Yes, this is the point that lifts the book from being just about race relations in America to being a critique of modern industrial civilization itself.
So what on earth is a white bigger?
Well, Wright was looking at the world in the 1930s. He was looking at the rise of industrial society, not just in America, but in Europe. He was looking at the rise of fascism.
Okay.
And he saw millions of people, white people, who were profoundly alienated. They were cut off from the land, cut off from traditional religion, cut off from tight-knit communal values. They were just, cogs in a massive impersonal machine.
So they felt that same shadow, that same feeling of being blocked and insignificant.
They felt insignificant. And Wright's argument was that when you strip people of meaning, when you reduce them to just tools for production and consumption, they will eventually revolt. They will embrace violence or nationalism or authoritarianism just to feel something, just to feel like their lives matter.
So while Native Son uses the specific machinery of American racism as its focus,
The engine underneath it all is this modern condition of alienation. Racism is the specific tool used against Bigger Thomas, but the underlying crisis in perception, that feeling of being trapped in a world that doesn't see you as human, is a much more universal modern condition.
all right, that's a huge concept. Let's move to section 3. We've established the environment, the cage. We've established the product, the unlikable but understandable, bigger. Now let's map the other actors in this system.
Yes, the system actors.
Yeah.
Because in a structural analysis, characters aren't just people with unique personalities. They are representatives of institutions and social forces.
Let's start with the big one. The man at the top of the food chain, Mr. Dalton.
The capitalist,
Yeah.
the philanthropist.
He's the wealthy white man who lives in a mansion and hires Bigger as his family chauffeur. But here's the thing about him. He seems nice.
He's very nice, he's soft-spoken, he's polite, he donates millions of dollars to charity. Specifically, he buys ping pong tables for the local Negro Youth Center.
So on paper, it's very easy to look at him and say, well, he's one of the good ones. He's trying to help.
And that is the trap. That's the crisis in perception Wright wants to expose. He's showing us the fundamental difference between individual benevolence and systemic exploitation.
Okay, so where does Mr. Dalton get the millions of dollars that he uses to buy those ping pong tables?
From his real estate company.
And what real estate company is that?
He is the owner and operator of the Southside Real Estate Company. He is the landlord of the Black Belt.
Wait, so he's the one who owns the tenement building that Bigger's family lives in?
He is the one enforcing the color line. He is the one charging the predatory rents for the rat-infested apartments. He is the one creating the slum that produces the very problem he is now trying to solve with charity.
So he creates the misery with one hand, and then he takes a tiny fraction of the profit from that misery, buys a ping pong table with it, gives it to a boys' club, and gets to feel like a hero.
It's a perfect closed loop. It's reputation laundering. It's a way for the system to perpetuate itself while allowing the people at the top to maintain a clear conscience.
There's a scene later in the book at the inquest where Bigger's lawyer, Max, questions Dalton about this.
It's a brilliant scene. Max asks him a very simple question. Mr. Dalton, you own all this property. Why don't you just rent houses to black people in other neighborhoods? Why don't you break the line?
And what does Dalton say? What's his justification?
He says it would be unethical.
Unethical to integrate housing. That sounds backwards.
He says it would be unethical to his fellow landlords. It would disrupt the code of real estate ethics. It would lower property values for his white clients. In his mind, his fiduciary duty to the system of segregation overrides any moral duty to the human beings trapped within it.
So he is trapped in the system too. But his cage is made of gold and business norms and politeness.
His cage is very comfortable, and the ping pong table isn't charity. It's a tax he pays to the system to allow himself to sleep at night, and it's completely, utterly useless. A ping pong table doesn't cure a lifetime of humiliation and fear.
Then we have the younger generation, the woke generation of the 1930s. We have Mary Dalton, the daughter, and her boyfriend, Jan Erlone.
And they represent liberal paternalism and radical idealism. John is an avowed communist. Mary is a wealthy sympathizer who's slumming it with the radicals.
And unlike her father, they want to be friends with Bigger. They see the injustice. They want to smash the system.
But they fail. And they fail spectacularly because of their own catastrophic crisis in perception.
They don't see him, do they?
They don't see him. Bigger Tom's the individual. They see a symbol. They see a prop. To them, Bigger is the oppressed worker. He's the Negro question. He is an abstract concept they can use to prove their own enlightenment.
And this leads to that excruciatingly painful scene, the car ride. I cringe just thinking about it.
Oh, it is one of the most uncomfortable scenes in American literature. It's a masterclass in tension.
So set the scene.
Oh, yeah.
Bigger's first night on the job. He's supposed to drive Mary to a university lecture.
Right. He shows up. He's in his uniform. He opens the car door for her as he's been instructed, but she's with Jan. And they immediately tell him, no, don't do that. We're all comrades here.
They completely shatter the established rules of their interaction.
And then they insist that he not sit in the driver's seat alone. They make him get in the front, and they sandwich him between them. Mary on one side, Jan on the other.
And then they tell him, don't take us to the university. Take us to a black restaurant on the south side. We want to see how your people live.
To them, this is a revolutionary act. It's a field trip. It's an adventure. Look at us. We're breaking taboos. We're showing this poor black man that we're on his side.
But for Bigger, what is it for Bigger?
It is terror. Pure, distilled, stomach-churning terror.
Why? I mean, I know why, but articulate it for the listener who might think, hey, they're just trying to be nice.
Because Bigger knows the real rules of the system. Mary and Jan are playing a game. For Bigger, this is life and death. He knows that a black man sitting in the front seat of a fancy car, sandwiched between a white woman and a white man in 1930s Chicago, he is a target.
If a police car pulls them over.
If a cop pulls them over, Jan might get a slap on the wrist. Mary might get a stern talking to from her father. Bigger could be dragged out of the car, beaten, arrested, or worse. He could die.
So their kindness is actually putting a giant target on his back.
It is lethal kindness. It's a kindness born of ignorance. They are so wrapped up in their own symbolic gesture that they are completely blind to the actual danger they are putting him in, and Bigger hates them for it. He sits there sweating, mute, feeling like a caged animal on display.
And their inability to see his fear, to perceive his reality, it leads directly to the tragedy.
Directly.
We have to talk about the murder of Mary Dalton, because it is the pivot point of the entire novel. And Wright does something very, very specific here. This is not a crime of passion. It's not a premeditated murder for gain.
It is a reflex action. It is a systemic outcome. It's a collision of forces, not an act of will.
So set the scene for us. It's late. Bigger has driven them around. Mary is now completely helplessly drunk.
Blind drunk. Literally falling down, passing out. Jan has already left. Bigger is now responsible for getting her into the house without her parents finding out.
So he has to carry her upstairs to her bedroom.
He is now in the Holy of Holies. The white woman's bedroom, the ultimate taboo, the one space that the entire architecture of Jim Crow society is designed to violently protect. Bigger is terrified out of his mind. He knows that just being in this room is a capital crime.
And as he lays her on the bed, the door handle turns.
And Mrs. Dalton comes into the room, the mother.
And crucially, she is blind, literally blind.
Which is just the heaviest metaphor you can imagine. The blind matriarch of this society, the blind justice, the blind privilege. She comes into the dark room to check on her daughter. She calls out Mary's name.
And Bigger freezes. He's trapped between the bed and the door.
He enters a state of pure animal panic. He is terrified that Mary, who is mumbling and stirring in her drunken sleep, will make a sound. If she speaks, her mother will know someone else is in the room. If her mother finds Bigger Thomas in her daughter's bedroom at midnight,
In his mind, it's over. It's the lynch mob. It's the end of his life.
it's the end. So instinct takes over, pure, unthinking, conditioned reflex. He grabs a pillow,
Yeah.
and he presses it over Mary's face.
Is he trying to kill her?
No. He is trying to silence her. He is trying to stop the sound from coming out. He is pressing down, his eyes fixed on the white, ghostly figure of the blind mother, terrified of the system that she represents. He presses and presses until the mother, satisfied, turns and leaves the room.
And when he lifts the pillow,
Mary is dead. He smothered her.
he killed her out of fear.
He killed her because the system had drawn such a sharp, violent, electrified line between black male existence and white female existence that their mere proximity in a private space equaled death. The fear of the taboo was stronger than the value of her life.
That is the structural argument. If that social boundary didn't exist, if they could have just been two people in a room, the story ends with her waking up with a hangover. Instead, she ends up in the basement furnace.
It is a tragedy of structure. The murder wasn't a choice. It was a predictable, systemic collision.
So Mary is dead. Bigger, in another panic, burns her body in the furnace to hide the evidence. He tries to cover his tracks, even creating a fake ransom note to throw the Dawkins off the scent. But eventually, the bones are found.
And now the entire system shifts gears. We move from the passive phase of containment to the active phase of eradication. This is section 4, the feedback loop.
And this is where we see the media and the law begin to work together as a single machine.
The media operates as the primary feedback mechanism. It's the amplifier. As soon as Bigger is identified as the suspect and flees, the headlines begin. And Wright reproduces them directly in the text of the novel.
Sex crime, Negro rapist, ape, jungle beast.
Notice the immediate framing. There was zero evidence of sexual assault.
Yeah.
Bigger never touched her that way. But the papers immediately frame it as a sex crime. Why?
Because that's the narrative that sells newspapers. And more importantly, it's the narrative that justifies the most extreme state violence.
Exactly. If he's a murderer, he's a criminal who needs to be caught. If he's a rapist beast who defiled a pure white woman, he is an existential threat to civilization itself. It justifies the hunt.
And they don't just racialize it, they politicize it.
Oh, instantly. The state's attorney, a man named Buckley, immediately links Bigger to the communists. He blames Jan Erlone. He spins this entire conspiracy theory that this was a red plot to corrupt black youth and overthrow the government.
It's a perfect 2-for-1. You crush the black community and you discredit your political dissidents at the same time.
It works like a charm. The manhunt that follows is massive. Wright describes 5,000 police and volunteers sweeping through the Black Belt.
5,000. That is an army.
It is an occupying army. It is an invasion. They go door to door, they kick in doors, they raid homes without warrants, terrorizing the entire community.
And there's that detail you mentioned earlier about the collective punishment.
Yes, it's not just about finding Bigger. It's about punishing the entire population for producing him. Wright mentions mass firings. A wealthy banker's wife fires her black cook, who she's known for years, because she's suddenly afraid the cook might poison the children.
So because one man committed a crime, the entire demographic is now seen as guilty until proven innocent.
That is the feedback loop in action. A single act of violence, the murder, leads to widespread public fear, which is whipped up and amplified by the media, which then leads to harsher enforcement, the police raids and firings, which in turn leads to deeper alienation and terror in the black community.
And that deeper alienation just prepares the soil for the next Bigger Thomas to grow.
You are pouring gasoline on the fire in an attempt to put it out. It's a self-perpetuating cycle of crisis.
Bigger is eventually caught, of course. He's trapped on a water tower in a snowstorm. It's a very dramatic, very cinematic ending to the chase.
But the real climax of the book isn't his capture, it's the trial.
The trial it's less of a legal proceeding and more of a philosophical debate, right? It's like a Socratic dialogue between two opposing worldviews.
It is exactly that. You have Buckley, the state's attorney, who represents the system as it is, and you have Boris Max, the communist lawyer, defending Bigger, who represents the systemic view.
And Buckley's argument is pretty simple. Kill the monster.
Buckley uses the language of sanitation, of hygiene. He calls Bigger a lizard, a coiled cobra, a cancer on the body politic. His argument is that you must cut out the infected tissue to save the rest of society. It is purely about fear management and removal.
And Max, Max gives a very, very long speech.
He does. It's a multi-page monologue.
Yeah.
Some critics have problems with it, but it is the intellectual engine of the entire novel.
What is his core argument distilled down?
Guilt is not personal.
That is a hard pill to swallow. How can guilt not be personal? Bigger killed her.
Max argues that executing this one individual, Bigger Thomas, solves absolutely nothing. Because the manufacturing plant, the society that created him, is still running at full capacity. He says we must deal here with the raw stuff of life, emotions and impulses and attitudes, as yet unconditioned by the strivings of science and civilization.
He's arguing that Bigger was never actually civilized because he was never allowed into civilization to begin with.
Exactly. He argues that the murder itself was a reflex action, created by a lifetime of fear. And then he drops the prophecy. He warns the court, and by extension the reader, that there are millions of Biggers out there, black and white, being created by these same conditions.
He uses that powerful image of the city's skyscrapers.
Who knows, he says, when some slight shock shall send the skyscrapers in our cities toppling. He's arguing that the towering edifices of American power and wealth are resting on quicksand, and that quicksand is the thwarted life, the crushed humanity of the millions of people locked in the basement.
So if you keep digging the foundation out from under your own house to build a wall around it, eventually the whole house is going to collapse.
That is the warning. Max isn't arguing that Bigger is innocent of the act. He's arguing that the state, that the society, is an accomplice to the creation of the criminal.
But the court doesn't buy it.
Of course not. The system is designed to protect itself, not to engage in self-criticism. Bigger is swiftly found guilty and sentenced to death.
So let's bring this into the present day. This is a book that's over 80 years old. Why are we still talking about it? How does this blueprint, as you called it, map onto our crisis and perception today?
Because the blueprint is still active. The specific materials have changed. Maybe we don't use legally enforced restrictive covenants in housing anymore, but the fundamental structural design is hauntingly familiar.
So where do we see these patterns today?
I see them in three main areas. First, and most obviously, residential segregation.
We still have the black belt. We just call it different things. We talk about zip codes.
We have zip codes that are a greater predictor of your life expectancy than your genetic code. We have neighborhoods systematically cut off from capital investment. We have failing schools funded by low local property taxes. It is the exact same feedback loop. Poor housing leads to limited opportunity, which leads to survival crime.
Okay, what's the second area?
Media amplification. Just turn on the news. Look at how we cover crime.
The old saying, if it bleeds, it leads.
It's more than that. Look at the imagery, the constant use of the mugshot. Think about the super predator narrative of the 1990s, the way crime stories are framed to incite maximum fear rather than provide any structural understanding. The media still manufactures monsters to justify harsh policing.
And the third?
The carceral system. We have the largest prison population per capita in the entire world.
It's the modern warehouse.
We use prisons and policing to manage social problems, poverty, mental illness, addiction. Instead of actually trying to solve them, we're still bottling people up, just like Bigger, just on a much, much larger scale.
It's almost depressing how relevant the book still is. The language changes, but the mechanics persist.
It's incredibly sobering. But that is why we study the blueprint. You cannot hope to dismantle or redesign a house if you don't know where the load-bearing walls are. Native Son shows us the load-bearing walls of the system.
I want to end by touching on the final interaction in the book. Bigger is on death row, awaiting execution, and Max comes to say goodbye.
This is, for me, the most devastating and profound moment in the novel.
Because Bigger finally has a moment of clarity. He realizes something.
Throughout the entire book, Bigger has been either numb or enraged. He's been reacting, not thinking, but now, facing certain death, he tries to make sense of his own life, and he tells Max something that is just bone-chilling.
He says that he only felt truly alive and free after he killed.
He says, what I killed for, I am.
That just, it chills me to the bone every time. What I killed for, I am. What does that mean?
Think about what that means from a systemic perspective. The system suppressed his human will, his sense of self, so completely that the only way he could feel like a distinct individual, the only way he could feel like he had agency and could affect the world, was to destroy life.
Violence was his only pathway to a meaningful identity.
Exactly. It was the first time his actions had real, world-shaking consequences. It was the first time the white world saw him not as a boy or a chauffeur or an invisible servant, but as a force to be reckoned with.
That's what Max meant by the death of the heart.
Right, is issuing a final, stark warning. If you kill the heart of a people, if you deny them every avenue for creation and self-expression, they will eventually turn to destruction. And that destruction will inevitably threaten the physical safety of the oppressor.
It's not a moral threat, it's a statement of physics. Pressure builds until the container bursts.
And that is the ultimate crisis in perception. The society refuses.
Wow, that is a lot to process. But that's why we do these deep dives, to look at the machinery.
It is a very difficult book, but an absolutely essential one.
We want to give full credit to Richard Wright for this masterpiece of American literature. We spent this time analyzing the structure, but the prose itself, the feeling of the cold Chicago snow, the intense heat of the furnace, the sound of that rat scratching in the wall, you have to read it to feel it.
I highly recommend it. It is not a comfortable read by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a necessary one.
If you haven't read Native Son, or if you haven't read it since you were forced to in high school, go pick up a copy. Borrow it from your local library. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next. Thanks for listening.